It's time to do business again. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a bright new day. We have 55 minutes to do current and relevant business conversations right here. I'm John Bekwa. This is Business Morning, and we start our program as usual from the global oil space. We see prices ticked higher in early trade today, climbing for a fourth straight day on supply uncertainty as investors weighed conflicting messages from Tehran and Washington on whether the Strait of Hormuz is open to ships. And U.S. President Donald Trump has said that no talks were taking place with Iran and is insisting that the Strait of Hormuz was open, contradicting Iran's assertion that the critical waterway remained short to shipping. A temporary ceasefire agreement expired on Monday, and a senior Iranian official said that his country was moving to a fully offensive military posture due to the diplomatic stalemate, though there were no reports of fresh strikes by either side. As of Tuesday, to avoid the Strait of Hormuz, Iraq's cabinet has approved mechanisms for exporting Iraqi crude through specialized international and local companies via multiple export outlets. This information was shared by the Iranian government. Meanwhile, two Chinese shipping giants have stopped sending oil tankers through the Hormuz and the Bab al-Mandeb Strait amid the conflict in the Middle East, and they are instead collecting oil cargoes outside the Gulf. So this morning we see the price has gone past even 90, now at $91.60 per barrel. That's 0.66% up. And then WTI is at $85.63, having gained 0.78%. And talking about the Strait of Hormuz, I did take a peep on that, and we saw about 300 vessels awaiting passage on the Strait of Hormuz. As at this morning, movement is barely about less than 10. Is what I saw from the website. So it's a very tight Strait of Hormuz that we have, even though the U.S. president is saying that it's open, but in reality, from the data and pictures that we have seen this morning, it isn't. And vessels are waiting, over 300 of them waiting to be admitted through that strait. To the markets now. In the local bourse here, we saw a drop at the close of trade yesterday, 0.06% down. And we have dropped even lower than that. At this time, equities cap, we see 156.416. Activity, mostly red, is what we saw yesterday. And yesterday we saw the revenue allocation for the month of July. The Federation Account Allocation Committee, they have approved 3.007 trillion naira for the federal government, the states, and local governments as revenue for the month of July 2026. The decision was taken at FAAC's August meeting, and this time it was held in Owerri, Imo State, where the committee urged governments to turn rising revenues into lasting fiscal strength and improved social investments. Of course, we know revenue has increased in some cases, in some of the states, more than 100, 200%. That we have seen since the removal of subsidy, and now we have increased revenue coming from the oil space, and all of that feed into FAAC. And of course, it's being shared by the three tiers of government. So the challenge is turning that, as FAAC, the committee there, is asking government, turning that into sustainable growth. We're looking at the details of FAAC for July. Gross statutory revenue, that went up 17.8% to 4.359 trillion naira in July, from 3.7 trillion naira in June, while gross VAT revenue, that stood at 793.97 billion naira, slightly below the previous month. And then when we look at FAAC says that the increase was driven by stronger collections from both oil and non-oil sources, including petroleum profit tax, companies income tax, and royalties. The committee is also asking government to diversify revenue, improve transparency, and invest in key areas such as health, education, and infrastructure. Turnover on the Nigerian foreign exchange market, NAFEM, that has gone up sharply to 1.41 billion naira, $1 billion, I beg your pardon, on August 17, marking its highest level in 5 weeks as activity in the foreign exchange market rebounds. Data from the Central Bank of Nigeria shows the latest turnover is more than 7 times the $187 million recorded on August 11, when activity fell to an 11-week low. The market records 394 deals, including 178 interbank transactions. Increase follows a gradual recovery in trading activity, with turnover rising to $607.47 million on August 12 and $387.09 million on August 13, before reaching $352.34 million on August 14. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, the FCCPC, they've launched a fresh investigation into Nigeria's cement market following preliminary findings suggesting possible price manipulation. The investigation follows a 3-month cross-border study by the Commission's Anti-Competition Practices Department, prompted by complaints over rising cement prices. The study compares Nigeria's market with those of Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, and Togo. The FCCPC says a 50-kilogram bag of cement, which sold for between 9,300 naira to 9,700 in January, is now about 10,500 and 13,000, and that is by June, prices reaching as high as 15,000 by July. The Commission notes that Nigeria has installed cement production capacity of about 60 to 65 million metric tons annually, compared with domestic consumption of roughly 25 to 30 million tons. It's now examining whether production costs, pricing practices, market power, or other factors adequately explain the price increases. And now let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at those EU rules for cocoa export into the region or the bloc and how that may affect Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's still Business Morning here on Channels Television. West Africa's cocoa industry is racing to comply with tough new EU anti-deforestation rules. Widespread traceability gaps among smallholder farmers could disrupt supplies to the bloc and perhaps push the cost of chocolate, for the EU. So to export cocoa to the European Union now, according to those new rules, shipments must comply with strict anti-deforestation laws, food safety standards, and traceability mandates. Let's have that slide giving us details of the new rules at this time. So there's the geolocation mapping. Exporters must trace cocoa back to the specific farm plot and provide digital polygon or GPS coordinates. And then deforestation cut off, that's also another issue. Land must not have been deforested or degraded after December 31, 2020. There's a legal production. Farming must comply with local national laws, including land use rights, environmental protection, and anti-child forced labor regulations. Recently, we had the U.S. talking a whole lot about this forced labor. Then a compliance deadline for large and medium operators. They could face face full enforcement from December this year, December 30, while small and micro enterprises have until June next year for the full enforcement. In Nigeria, who are those that could be affected or that would be affected? We see Nigeria produces roughly about 340,000 to 350,000 metric tons of cocoa beans produced annually. So Nigeria ranks as about the 6th largest global producer. And then the sector relies on about 300,000 to 350,000 smallholder farmers. So these are the people who could be most affected. 350,000 smallholder farmers who cultivate about 1.4 million hectares of land, primarily in the southwestern and south-south parts of the country. At Nigeria's cocoa production overview, we see total production at about 343,000 tons per year. Farmland about 1.4 million hectares. Is being used, farmers about 350,000. So these are the individuals who are racing to meet up with these new rules of the European Union at this time. And it does sound scary when we look at some of those things, but perhaps I'm just jumping the guns. Mr. Tunde Banjoko is the Managing Director of Bio Farms Limited. He's also the Chairman of the Agricultural Group for the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industries right here in the studio. Mr. Banjoko, good morning.
Thank you, Ine, for having me.
Good to have you, but I tell you, even reading this, is scary to me, even though I'm not a farmer, but I mean, I'm a Nigerian, and when I see some of this, I mean, they seem so technical compared to our level. The level of our farmers, you understand?
Yeah.
So we talk about geolocation, mapping, they want to trace it back to the farm plot. That might not be very difficult, although the technology to do that is another thing. Then the deforestation. The land must not have been deforested or degraded after December 2020. Legal production, they must comply with land use rights, Nigeria and our papers, environmental protection. I don't think we have a lot of problem with the forced labor.
No, really, if you look at most of the laws or regulations, they are not something that an outsider needs to tell us. It's just because we are used to doing things anyhow as a nation or as a continent. Really, telling us not to force children to go to cocoa farm, because we realize that most farms in Africa, you'll find a lot of children.
But do we have children on our farms?
Yes.
But isn't that parents just bringing
that's
children
what I'm saying. So
to come and help them?
For example, we talk about over almost 20 million out of school children.
Yes.
So though we talk about most of them in the north, but we still find some of these people in rural communities not going to school. And their parents are fine with them following them to the farm. So you can see that really...
That's forced labor, though.
I
mean, in this part of the world, you see that, you're just taking your child to where you work.
No, even there are two things now. We are talking about forced labor, children labor.
Okay.
So all those ones, they are not forced, but they are child labor. So don't bring these children to cocoa farm.
Okay.
The other ones can fall under forced, but the children should be in school. Don't bring them to work on the cocoa farm. So I think it's something simple and straightforward, because most of these things...
But our farmers may have problems with it.
So the law is now telling them, so if you are going to be selling to an exporter, you will have to send your children to school. I think it's a good law.
No, I'm not saying it's not a good law. I'm just saying that, I mean, growing up, if your mommy had a business,
maybe on holiday you should do that.
So, but nobody will recognize, because it's holiday, then the children can go to the farm.
I'm sure we all know the truth. If it's holidays, because as farmers we work in communities, and you see a lot of children not going to school. Those are some of the issues we have, even in developed part of the country, where people don't go to school, they don't learn a trade, and after some time they leave the rural community, move to the city, become tout, become agbero and all that. Those are some of the genesis. So I think we should even make it a law, really, out of school children going to the farm, doing some of these things. This is one of the things the law is really talking about. And if you look at what the law is talking about, really, is trying to also enforce forestation policies. Because look at recently, I think in Port Harcourt this year, they cited some, elephants. Because most of the lands are being deforested. These animals are getting homeless. In Ogunwater side last year, an elephant killed a farmer just in Ogunwater side. Last year also they sighted elephant in Ijebu-Igbo in Ogun State. So some of these animals, we are probably chasing them out of their habitat. So this law is also saying, can we leave the wildlife, the areas that have been conserved for wildlife, can we leave these people to exist? Also looking at the climate effect, because by the time you cut all the trees, the carbon dioxide that the trees should have been absorbing, you are sending them back to the atmosphere, leading to more climate change. So they are thinking more in those areas of keeping the wildlife, keeping the climate change, regulating the atmospheric temperature and things like that. So it's really not a witch hunt, in my opinion. It's for us to start learning how to do things right as a nation. Though there are several conversations around it, who is bearing the cost, because it's at a cost. Like most of the major exporters, because those are the ones that are concerned really, they are saying, who is bearing this cost? It's costing us about $30, $70 to map out maybe a ton of production area. So they are talking about who is going to bear the cost. But in terms of the advantages, I think we have a lot to benefit. Although I have a different opinion. Now the EU is saying this is our law. The EU mops up 60% of global production. So
of cocoa.
Of cocoa. So if you don't want to sell to them, you can leave the laws. Look at Asia, the US, and sell. But I'm sure the US too, I'm hearing, are beginning to put same law or beginning to prepare same law. So it's either you learn to do it right now, so you can sell to any market.
But I mean, whatever markets, one of the things that I also saw is that they will also feel the pinch, because one way or the other, it will reduce supply. Exactly.
Yeah,
and so chocolate will become even
more expensive.
So chocolate might not be so big deal to us back here, but over there.
No, but we consume most of what we supply them the raw cocoa.
Yes.
We also are we import most of the cocoa back as chocolate.
No, but they consume chocolate more than us.
I think we do more than them. I think we do, but really for me, I think we should look at those laws and find a way to comply. But looking at what the president also said during the cocoa meeting in July, saying we should even start talking about processing our cocoa. You know, people thought the president is banning export, and they clarified that they are not banning export of cocoa. They are rather saying we should start talking of value addition. And I think there's one or two companies working on that in the country. But the president is saying, can we have more companies, more investors in that light? So for those supplying those investors, they might not have these issues. But for those who want to earn foreign exchange, they will have to comply with. And the earlier we comply, the better. Because I think cocoa, after oil and gas, cocoa is the next thing that
but I mean, when we look at our production and the potential, we are far below.
And I think one thing this is calling our attention to as a nation, we pride ourselves that we are doing 1.4 million hectares of land for cocoa. And our output is just about 300,000. Meaning, instead of doing between 1 to 2.5 tons per hectare, we are still doing 0.4, 0.5 per hectare. So I think those are the areas we should focus on now as a country. We should focus on how can we get our output.
So, Mr. Bajoko, Europe consumes far more finished chocolate than Africa.
Okay.
Europe consumes roughly 70%
of what they produce.
Yes.
Okay, so they will also feel it
so
more.
we supply the raw, about 70% of the raw material, but they consume 70%.
Okay, so we'll all feel it.
One way or the other.
All feel it. Okay. Because they are going to have reduced product supply to them. They are going to have their product. Because look at when they started this process now, some farmers initially were resisting the process of mapping their land. And that also takes me quickly to extension work in Nigeria and orientation. Most people probably misunderstood them for government agents trying to take over their land. So they were resisting the mapping of their land until some of those major, two of them, started giving orientation that these are the reasons.
But that should have been done before.
Before now. And no, I'm only talking about the issue of the distrust in our society. When you see somebody carrying survey equipment, the next thing is they've come to grab my land.
Your land.
So I think we should work on that too, the extension workers.
But are we actively in tune with meeting up with the geolocation part, the mapping and all of that. How much of that has happened?
I didn't get. We have two major cocoa exporters in Nigeria that are leading. One of them said he has done 124,000 hectares. I didn't get the other person to be able to confirm how many he has done, but I'm sure he must have also probably done something. But let's even assume 124. That's still about less than 300,000 hectares, and we are going to 1.4 million.
And that's December.
No. So they gave them December for the majors.
Yes.
The next, June
the
for the small and the micro guys.
So are we in the small and the micro parts?
No. We have a lot of major cocoa farms in Nigeria. The guys I mentioned, they are doing heavy numbers. So people who are doing heavy numbers, they are only concerned about the cost. That is the EU
because of the mapping and
is the EU going to refund them? You're asking me that you want to buy my product. These are the
condition
terms. But the money I'm spending to do this mapping, how do we cover the cost?
Can't it be included in the commodity price?
It's internationally decided. So you can't just, like, for example, today it's about $5,919 thereabout per ton. So you can't just decide mine will be $8,000 per ton. So you will have to, over the years, recover your cost. So it's going to, what the exporters are concerned now is that the money they are spending is reducing their profit margin. So hopefully the price will be stable over a long period and they can now recover their cost, because that is also one thing that is discouraging the exporters from doing this. Because this thing is not a new conversation. It's been on for a while. They've been pushing back, but now that the buyer of the commodity is saying, these are my stands, now they are being forced to comply. So we should see it from the different perspective of it, because even in Europe, the cow you eat is traced. And you remember, I think last time we were here, we were talking about tracing palm oil. So that's the same thing. We should start preparing for that. So I learned the federal government is doing something around that for palm oil too, because they called me. I think they were supposed to be on my farm too some weeks back. They are also now mapping oil palm plantations. So I'm using this opportunity to tell those who are also probably to get that information and probably get your field map, because traceability is something that everybody wants to know, where their product, what they are consuming, even the cows they eat, the fish, everything. We just don't want to buy randomly. And that's going to send, what do we call them? Those who are perpetrators of fake products. It's going to send them out of the market on the long run.
Yeah. But of course, last time we talked about that too. Now we talked about the cost of that and who will pay for it.
No, so that's part of the cost you're talking about. So somebody will bear the cost at this. But now, this time around, the farmers are not the one bearing the cost. So the farmers are good.
Are you talking about the EU?
For the EU own, the farmers are not bearing any cost. It's the exporters that are bearing the cost of mapping. What the farmer needs now is orientation, to let them know that when you see these guys coming with equipment, they are not government agents to take up your land. They are just mapping the land, so that, because these guys are saying, I want to sit in Europe and put on my phone and know the land where my product is coming from.
Exactly.
So it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's technology in this world.
It's technology this way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Banjoko, Managing Director of Bio Farms Limited and also the Chairman of the Agricultural Group for Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you, for having me.
All right, let's take a short break and we'll come back. We'll talk about electric vehicle adoption. The government, this administration has been generous, putting off some waivers, tax waivers and duties and all of that. But is it really trickling down? Is it increasing adoption? We'll find out in a moment. Welcome back to Watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. The world has been talking about energy transition here in Nigeria. Of course, we are not missing out of that. Talking about alternative energy vehicles, that has also been our conversation here in Nigeria. And we've seen this current administration led by President Bola Tinubu share some goodies, I suppose, to be as incentives for adoption of some of these vehicles. This morning we'll focus on electric vehicle. And so we've seen massive tax waivers in the first half of 2024 to 2026. The government approved waivers for nearly 4,000 imported electric vehicles. Zero-rated duties on EVs slashed to zero. It used to be 5%. There's complete exemption from value-added tax for electric vehicles, tax holidays on semi-knocked down assembled parts. So it could be coupled here in Nigeria. Of course, that's also supposed to boost local manufacturing at some level. We've seen that the target of the government is to have 60% of the vehicles in the country by 2050, 60% of it should be electric vehicles. And of course, we've heard a lot of talks about the savings that's using this vehicle. Fleet managers note that while traditional petrol vehicle requires weekly fueling costs, fully charging a personal EV at a public terminal costs, well, roughly 20,000. Compared to what you would use for petrol. These are some of the conversations that have been going on, but have we seen adoption really going on around this? Let's have Mr. Yusuf Abubakar, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Enerplus Energy Solutions, join us to give us first-hand information on this adoption. Mr. Abubakar, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Ini, how you doing? Thank you for having me today.
Great. So when we see adoption in the face of this effort by the government, is that positive? Is it negative? Is it moving?
I think it's very positive. What we've had so far, Nigerians are very adaptive people. EVs have been across. I've seen so many different EV cars in Nigeria. Just driving around different brands. So there's also been, local EV companies that are propping up from various angles. There's those value chains. So yeah, adoption has been pretty much straightforward, as far as I can tell. Like I said, Nigerians were very adaptive. We're very, hands-on when it comes to adaptation. So yeah.
These incentives by the government is paying off, but who are those adopting? Is it commercial? Is it the private sector, those who are using it for private purposes, or is it a mixture of both?
I think it's a mixture of all. I know the commercial guys are very hands-on because of the hike in fuel price, and if you look at what's happening between the Strait of Hormuz and the global fights that's affecting the fuel price, people would rather much go for electric. Households, most families now are looking at electric. Electric has been there for a while. Most Nigerians had electric cars, even when we look at the BMW EV back then. Now people are looking at, okay, what about the value chain? Charging stations is not just to have the electric cars anymore. The businesses are now looking at the value chain within having charging stations, decentralized locations, and which I think would eventually even help our grids. So in terms of adoption, it's all Nigerians is just what you can afford, right? Financial sectors are also coming in, and they are also trying to give finances. So I think if that is happening, there's adoption that's coming. Now, we're now just going to be looking at the pricing, okay, local content, and stuff like that. So it's a mix of every Nigerian and what you can afford. For the business people, it's cost effective. For the private people, it's also cost effective, but how much, So it's just the price that matters at this point.
But would you say this, the tax waivers and tax holiday, has it really encouraged more purchases, into the country?
Yeah, I think what the presidency did was brilliant. Removing the tax from 5% to 0% was really brilliant. It will strengthen the value chain. in terms of the people who are looking at it as business individuals who want to just purchase for their personal use. That would help. That would ease a lot of burden. Also, tax green credits. I think they can also, the federal government can leverage the green credits of how much EVs we're getting in terms of pollution. It's a step in the right direction. Like I earlier said, there's also financial institutions that are now looking at giving credits or loans for people who want to be able to purchase these electric cars. For me, my biggest thing is local. What are we doing locally? What are we, how are we expanding, which is also coming up just off the tax waivers, the coordination between IDEC, Nigerian customs, So I think it's a seamless structure. And I think if we can have more orientation, more encouragement, more investors, there's a lot of value chain that will be propped out of this. It's not just on the EV cars, even EV coaches, rail, they're still under the same e-mobility as far as I'm concerned.
And I'm glad you talked about the local industry, because we know that also the semi-knocks down assembly plant is also a target here. Has that created any activity around there, in the local space, instead of just the total import of vehicles or the mobility devices?
Yeah, I think, I'm always proud being a Nigerian, because I think we're the most creative people. We've been doing SKD for a while, even just patching different parts and cars together, metal sheets, and just looking at, the tax incentive that's been given zero. A lot of people I've seen over time, even up north, they've been working on assembly semi knockdown. And they've been building on it. Do we have solid brands? It takes time. We have different brands right now in Nigeria, like I said. Some of them are locally and they're SKD. But we also want to see a transition between SKD to CKD. Also to a point whereby our OEMs, our R&Ds are locally done. It will also push the value chain within the product designers. We want to see the next Johnny Ivy from Nigeria that would create a local, at least 40 to 60% locally designed and created and be exported around the world, launched in America or any part of the world as a global brand. So I think what the presidency are doing is a step on the right direction. I think we need to come together collaboratively and find a way where we can harmonize this. I know National Automotive Design and Development Center is where you go and do most of the licenses and recommendation that needs for you to do either manufacturing plants and cost of manufacturing as well, just depending on the scale you want to go on. We're talking between 10-15 billion to about 60 billion on an average. So these are not small money, right? So you also need that support, which the presidency just started giving, with also the private sector, the state government. So it's an harmonized system that needs to come together collaboratively and work hands in hands. So I feel IDEC is there, your import duty exempted certificates. Also now you can connect with Nigerian custom online, you can upload. So these are things that are, working. And I hope we can keep the energy. We can also start looking at external investors, not just for them to import cars to us as dumping grounds, but for us to be able to add value on every part of that car, from the boat to the tires to the metal sheet. We have metal companies in Nigeria, so this should even boost our metal industry.
Yeah, and talking about that, I've heard some stories about getting spare parts, maintenance of it, the skills for maintaining it. You want to go to a repair shop, you don't just go to any repair shop, or else you get worse than what you had. These issues obviously would feed into the desire for more people to adopt. How good are we when it comes to maintenance, availability of spare parts, and even the skills for it?
So I think maintenance would put that to every company and every establishment has their structure and how they tend to want to structure their maintaining of their products, right? And that is one part where I feel if we're bringing any partnership when it comes to like manufacturing, research and development, it needs to be locally. It needs to be locally because even the staffs that are involved in the design of the products would understand, okay, what parts they are. Once you understand the parts where they are going to, it's the same OEMs all around the world. Nigerians work in these factories outside of Nigeria brilliantly around the world. I see no reason why we can't come back home and put Nigeria first and put the first global product of Nigeria. So it's a thing where we need to be very intentional. We need to be very concise. We need to say, hey, this is what we want to do. And we want to do a proudly owned Nigerian e-mobility car. It doesn't matter the collaboration, the affiliation, but let it be locally designed by a Nigerian. There's that Nigerian factor, whether our environmental factor, these are things we need to consider. And as far as, the parts are concerned, when everything is designed and done here, it's easy for you to be able to say, okay, you know what, we have the molds. We don't have to source we have all the molds, all the parts of, so we don't have to now stretch out. And now, half of the resources we need to make the cars are uttered in Nigeria. They're on the floor, right? So it's the value chain and the partnership and the support we get from the government that would push us through. In all honesty, it's always the support from the government and also our people's adoption when it comes to we designing products or we bringing out technology that would affect the masses and also help us to grow. Because at the end of the day, I think we're in a world where we need to move forward. There's no point hanging behind, So I don't think that is a problem. I think whoever is getting into this sort of business understands the money at stake and will make sure it goes successfully. We have, a lot of brands that I wouldn't want to mention their names that have been in the automobile business. And we have also the new battery companies and EV companies that are propping up slowly, whether it's Keke Napep or the tricycles and then the normal sedans that we have.
All right.
So I don't think that is a problem. I also think the institutions, we need to strengthen our institutions very well.
All right. Thank you so much for all of that. And I'm glad that you said that the incentives created by the government is making impact. And so we hope to push that forward. Thank you so much, Mr. Yusuf Abubakar, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Enerplus Energy Solutions Limited. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ini.
All right, now for our DSTV viewers, we do have Pengasson Energy and Labour Summit Appeals 2026. That's awaiting you at the Congress Hall Transcorp Hilton in Abuja. And that is for our DSTV viewers. For all the platforms, please stay here with us on Business Morning. And of course, if you're on DSTV and you still want to stay with us, just go to our YouTube channel and you will see us right here on Business Morning. For now, let's go global. We'll start from the global bonds market. That's taken a breather. Yesterday we told you about it, and sovereign yields are retreating from multi-decade highs. Investors are returning to battered government debt after a sharp sell-off. The pullback follows a broad rise in long-term borrowing costs across major economies, driven by concerns over persistent inflation, growing government debt, and heightened geopolitical tensions. U.S. 30-year Treasury yields that had climbed to their highest level since 2007. Japan's 10-year yield that reached a three-decade high. European markets also face pressure, with German and French long-term yields reaching their highest levels in years. Rising oil prices, uncertainty over global economic outlook have further strengthened inflation concerns and raised questions about the path of interest rates. The latest retreat in yields offers some relief to bond markets, although analysts warn that fiscal pressures and weak investor confidence could keep growing costs elevated. A lot of data coming out from the UK. Today we have their inflation, and we see that it accelerated in July after energy bills surged, ending a short period of respite for hard-pressed British households. Consumer prices rose 2.9% from a year earlier, up from a 15-month low of 2.6% in June. This is according to the Office for National Statistics. The increase is in line with median forecast of economists surveyed by some reporters, and the Bank of England forecast a pickup to 2.8%. The jump largely reflects a 13% rise in the price cap that sets household energy bills, and this is only part offset by cheaper motor fuel. Services inflation, a gauge of domestic pressures watched by the Bank of England, that's dropped to 3.4% from 3.6%. Core inflation, which excludes energy, food, alcohol, and tobacco, that's held steady at 2.6%. South Korea chip maker SK Hynix plans to buy back about $28 billion worth of its own shares, and it's part of efforts to enhance shareholder value and strengthen investor confidence. The planned repurchase comes as the company expands its semiconductor operations and benefits from strong demand for advanced memory chips, particularly those used in artificial intelligence applications. The buyback is expected to support the company's share price by reducing the number of shares in circulation while giving investors a larger stake in the company's future earnings. SK Hynix remains one of the world's leading memory chip manufacturers, with growing investment in high bandwidth memory and other advanced technologies supporting its position in the global AI semiconductor markets. And then we move to Asia. In India, exports to the U.S. continue to show resilience despite a year of tariff disruptions under President Donald Trump, with several sectors maintaining or expanding their presence in the American market. Recent trade data shows India's merchandise exports to the U.S. remain broadly stable in the April to June quarter, even as tariffs weigh on some key product categories. Exports to the U.S. fell marginally by 0.06% year-on-year during the quarter, while India's overall exports recorded stronger growth. And electronics, pharmaceuticals, and other products have helped cushion the impact of higher duties. India's government says that about 45% of its exports to the U.S. remain outside the latest additional 10% Section 301 tariff, including generic pharmaceuticals, smartphones, and some products already covered by separate U.S. tariff measures. And in Indonesia, the central bank has kept the benchmark interest rate unchanged as the newly appointed governor projects further gains for the rupiah, signaling confidence in the currency's outlook. The decision reflects the central bank's focus on maintaining currency stability while supporting economic growth amid evolving global financial conditions. The rupiah's recent performance strengthens expectations that improved market sentiment and supportive policy measures could sustain further gains. The central bank also continues to monitor inflation, capital flows, and global interest rates movement as it balances currency stability with domestic economic activity. Crypto is in the news this morning. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission is proposing a new regulatory framework for certain investment contracts involving crypto assets, seeking to provide clearer pathways for digital asset companies to raise capital while maintaining investor projections. Under the proposed regulation, crypto assets, the SEC would create two exemptions from existing securities registration requirements. One would allow eligible offerings of up to $5 million over 4 years, while another would permit offerings of up to $75 million in a 12-month period. And this is subject to specified conditions and disclosure requirements. And finally, OpenAI has introduced a new version of its Marquee ChatGPT chatbox designed exclusively for teens, with stronger safeguards and monitoring after facing criticism and legal complaints that it drove some users to suicide. or dubbed ChatGPT for teens. The modified parameters automatically deploy for any user who registers as age 13 to 17 or is detected to be underaged by the company through usage patterns or account age. Most of the safeguards utilized in the ChatGPT for teens model already existed for ChatGPT accounts belonging to minors, such as restrictions when dealing with content related to self-harm, violence, eating disorders, and graphic sexuality. And those are the global stories. All right, thank you so much for still staying with us as we head, well, to the closing moments. Now, let's just see what's happening in the markets. That's Nigeria's local bourse at this time. We know that we have been closing in the red. Yesterday was another red close, and it does seem like the sentiment is still on. That's the negative sentiment. So we see that the market closed at 241,000 and is still there. But this morning, the all share has dropped 0.06%. And major drivers of this is profit taking on Fidelity Bank, on First Holdco, on Fortis Global Insurance, Okomu Oil still in the red, Conor International Energy Insurance, those are still experiencing profit taking. That's keeping the market in the bearish zone. But we'll see what the numbers will look like at 1:30. I'll be back for Business Incorporated to take you around the world of business in 25 minutes. I'm Ini John McQuarrie. I wish you the best of the rest of the day until 1:30.